Okay, good morning. I think we'll probably get started. There may be people, I think there's people still joining, but hopefully we can catch up. But just to very quickly introduce the context of this session, I'm just triple checking. Yes, we are recording. Good. I don't want to get told off by our marketing team. So HDK is a digital agency. We provide website design and marketing services to arts, culture, and heritage organizations, hence the focus on that industry today. Our clients include some amazing people, some of whom are here today. Also, people like English National Ballet, Arts Council England, Museum of the Home, and many more kind of wonderful organizations that we are very blessed to be working with. Um, that's kind of enough about HDK, I would say, up top. What I will say is we do a free digital marketing webinar every single month on a different topic, whether it's websites or something like this, which is kind of something that marketers do have to do, but don't necessarily get to talk about or learn about very often. So please feel free to check out our program. Some housekeeping, we do have live captions available if needed. And we are also recording the session today, but the settings are that nothing you say in the chat, none of your name or information will be shared. It will only be myself and the panelists who are being recorded. So there's no worries about privacy or anything like that. So, just to kind of talk you through how today's session will work, we are going to start with some introductions so you can get to know who is on the panel today. We then have three key discussion points that are going to kind of drive the conversation today and hopefully generate some insights on networking. And I've just realised I haven't said what the session is about today. It's about how to network in arts, culture, and heritage. And I've just seen a comment. Yes, we are recording and we will send it out next week to anybody who's signed up. So you'll get that automatically. After the discussion, if we have time, we'll do a very quick feedback survey just to get a sense of what people want from these sessions, how you feel they're going, and what we can improve. And then we will also have time for questions at the end. If you do have questions throughout the conversation, please feel free to comment them in the chat. If they feel pertinent to what we're talking about in the moment, I will absolutely feed them through. If it feels, super valuable, but maybe something that isn't tied to the exact conversation we're having, I'll save it for afterwards, and we will try to get to as many as we can. So, with all that in mind, I think let's get started with some introductions. And thank you to everyone who's continuing to kind of introduce yourselves in the chat. Really lovely to see that kind of continual engagement. So I will start. I'm Phoebe. I work at HDK and I am the events and partnerships manager. And I manage this webinar program is one of my roles. And I'm also exploring next year's program, which is going to be launching very soon. Yeah, so I'm very excited to share that with you. My pronouns are she, her, and today I'm wearing a brown collared jumper. I have a blonde bob that I'm wearing slightly curly today, and I'm wearing black headphones and some pink lipstick. That's me. So I'm going to hand over to Jocelyn to introduce yourself, and if you could also introduce the guest that you have with you today, that would be great.
Good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're from. My name is Jocelyn Burnham. I use she, her pronouns. A quick visual description. I'm a white chick in her 30s with sort of long, unkempt hair, like I've just crawled out of a forest. I'm wearing something that sort of feels like a knockoff Shakespearean costume that you'd kind of get before you walk on stage. Behind me are like a striped wall, and I have a very fluffy friend with me. This is Rousseau, who is the fluffiest cat in the world, who I'm currently cat sitting for. About me, I work with organizations like the Tape, Shakespeare's Globe, the Church of England, with AI. I'm what's called sort of a neutral AI communicator. So I don't tell people that it's good or bad. I'm all about how to empower people's own views on it, wherever those go. Even if they want to spend their life criticizing it, I will champion them. And within that, I do lots of networking to obviously meet clients, but then also to figure out what's going on in arts, in tech, and then make connections between the two. So yeah, lovely to talk to all of you today. I'll pass it over to Lewis.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jocelyn. I'm Lewis Roden. I'm the member community manager at the Arts Marketing Association. If you don't know us, we're a membership organisation that supports anyone doing audience development work in the arts, culture, and heritage sector with sort of training, resources, advocacy, and most importantly for this, networking, which is something that I lead on. I use he, they pronouns, and I'm a mixed race person in the sort of mid to now late 20s, wearing sort of a long khaki and white t-shirt. And I'll pass over to Hayden.
Hi everybody. My name is Hayden Carrodus. I am been working in arts and culture now for about maybe 8 or 9 years at this point. I'm an arts and culture consultant, primarily around social media and digital marketing. Um, I am now in my almost mid 40s, so I'm getting on in there. I have on a white cardigan and a white baseball cap. And yeah, that's me. Oh, networking wise, sorry. So yes, in terms it comes to networking, digital, I that is where I really thrive when it comes to networking. I'm also, ironically, a partner in one of the largest networking events in my city, so there's that as well.
Lovely. Amazing. Thank you all. Really useful context as well, kind of going into the conversation. And some lovely visual descriptions. So thank you very much. So I think let's just get started with our first discussion point. And this one is really just to kind of open up the conversation and the tone, I think, of networking in the sector that we're in, because it's not like every other sector. So my first question for the panelists is, what do you think are the key principles of effective networking in the arts? And I'm going to be annoying and ask somebody to volunteer to go first.
I'm Oh, you can go ahead, Jocelyn. I'll go after you.
Um, sure, sure. So I think there are lots of ways to network. I think that should just be said at the top. Often there's like official networking moments that you go to or networking evenings. And I think what a lot of people in the arts will relate to is a lot of, if not most networking, I think probably happens outside of those designated events. Those designated events can be really useful too, but so much happens in the in-between spaces. And one theme that I think is going to come up a lot today is that it's so personal to you on how you like to network, how you like to build up those quality relationships, and how you make it sort of authentic to yeah, to what you enjoy talking about and what you enjoy expressing. With that said, I think there are still some sort of kind of straightforward basics that are really helpful. So I think when it comes to being visible, if you're online or something, always make sure that you have, you're easy to contact. You have your email up, you might have a website, kind of make it quite clear what it is that you want to talk about, make it easy to find you if someone Googles you, even if it's a cheap little website, just have your name parked somewhere so you can be found. All those sort of basics just at the top to kind of introduce a theme, I would say that networking is really a muscle that you build up. It's not something where you throw yourself into it and then you get really overwhelmed because you don't feel you're doing it right, but it's sort of a continual practice. And I think for me, at least, networking has been about kind of figuring out actually what I enjoy doing instead of trying to shift myself into the perfect networker with a cocktail who's able to, immediately get into all these conversations. I would love to be that person, and one in 100 times, maybe I can say something witty, but usually I'm not that person. So for me, it's about how you shift to try and find something which works for you. But I won't go too deep into it because I want to hear what the others have to say.
Amazing. Thank you so much for starting us off, Jocelyn. Lewis, why don't you go next?
I think those are such amazing points. I had a couple of things I was thinking about, which I just think are good principles just to have in the back of your mind. The first one I was thinking about is be friendly, be comfortable, be your authentic self. I think, as Phoebe mentioned in the introduction, networking is a bit different in sort of arts, culture, and heritage than it is in other sectors. People are looking for honest and quite genuine connections. So you can go beyond your role of what you're there for, whether you're there representing an organization yourself as a freelancer, because a lot of the actual connections that will develop into something else are driven by you as a person. And I think this is because we all know that sort of the sector is in a little bit of crisis at the moment, but people still want something that is positivity driven. So always lead with kindness, positivity, and that sort of genuine aspect. One of the We'll probably get onto this later, but I help run a networking scheme, and one of the things I always say to the people involved with it is 99% of the people in a networking event aren't competitors. They're the 99% of the people who are there aren't your competitors. They're your future collaborators that you just haven't met yet.
I love that as like a kind of summary of the approach in the arts. That's lovely. Thank you. Um, and Hayden, what do you think the key principles are?
Um, for me, networking here, it is really about where you see yourself, where you want to kind of show up. If you're trying to figure out a career path, or if you're trying to figure out what where you want to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, it's about you thinking about how can you position yourself in a place where you can meet people of similar minds, or where you can connect with people who have a similar outlook to work, or want to progress in a career path. Networking doesn't always have to be about how high the person is. It's about who has the same kind of passions and experiences in life with you. And what you'll find is when you start to reach out and go to find those kind of spaces or communities, people will naturally gravitate towards you because you're doing things in spaces that are similar to them and that are akin to them, especially if you're working and you're generally putting in work in those kind of areas, or those places of discovery. So I really think it's about being clear about what you're trying to do when you're networking, or being clear about where you want to go. And that will really help you to find the places you want to communicate with and find the people you want to kind of connect with.
Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, I think there's just absolutely no point forcing connections that, if there isn't any common ground in the work you do or the things you care about, you can have a lovely conversation and be friendly with each other. I think it's always important to have those conversations. But it's also about recognizing, who is a natural fit for the work I do and the things I care about. And, I've had loads of lovely conversations with people at networking events about nothing to do with work. And it's really nice to kind of build those relationships from that basis and then discover, oh, actually, there might be some crossover and I really like you, so it'd be quite nice to work together. So yeah, I think that's a really nice kind of overview of how networking might be slightly different in the sector that we're in.
Just to add to that too, one of the things that I found most useful with networking is to begin the conversation with who you'd love to connect them to. I
Mm.
think a lot of the time we kind of forget that they're there to network as well. And actually, it's really lovely when you can start with a bit of positivity and be like, oh, your work sounds really cool. You would love to speak to this person, would love to make that possible somehow. And it also kind of gets the pattern going of, cool, we're excited, we're connecting people to each other, and it shows a bit of enthusiasm. That's been my kind of go-to trick recently of, well, it's very genuine. I often do want people to talk to each other, but it's a great way
Yeah.
to lead into conversations too.
Yeah, and I think it's a really lovely way to establish that relationship of like reciprocity and kind of say, I'm here to help, like, I remember what you do and I want to help you do that work easier with, more exciting projects and through that you then create the dynamic where hopefully they do the same and they'll remember what you do and help connect you with other people as well. And I think kind of just naturally feeding into the next discussion point. And I think this kind of goes back to something that you said a little bit earlier, Jocelyn, and that um, nobody is kind of, well, maybe there are some people who are like born incredible networkers, but it absolutely is like a muscle. And when I first worked in PR, and thankfully that really helped me kind of develop those muscles. When I started, I would describe myself as a shy introvert. Now I'm a confident introvert, so I'm much more confident in networking, but I do still find it quite challenging. So this discussion point is kind of like recognizing that it is hard sometimes. Um, so, for anybody who finds networking intimidating or unnatural, what practical strategies have you tried and found to be useful when you're networking in person? Um, does anybody want to start this one off? Hayden.
Oh, whoops, that wasn't fair, but I'll go. I have to admit, networking in person, I'm very similar to Phoebe, although I can do it, and I've met loads of great people through it. Online is where I do tend to shine when it comes to networking. But what I would say is, when I do go to network in person, I always make sure I've got targets. If I'm being honest with you, I'll have one or two people who I know I want to connect with. I know there's things that I find interesting about them. Normally, I'll go to a place thinking, okay, this person's going to be here, potential for me to kind of meet up with them. But one thing I would say about that as well is anybody you meet with, it doesn't mean that you have to work with them tomorrow. Like try and really think about what that relationship looks like when you're going to a venue or space to network in person. Um, Try and have a few. I don't want to say elevated pitches, but have a few structured sentences or stories or anecdotes that you want to kind of share when you go to an event, so that at least that way you know you've got something to talk about, any an icebreaker, whatever that may be, just that you've got ready, and then let the conversation flow naturally. And then what one other thing I would say about networking, which can be quite funny, is don't be scared to leave. Like once you've done like sometimes in networking places we can go to these places and we just kind of stand there and have the conversation like, okay, I'm gonna move on now, and that's totally okay because that's what you're there for. So don't feel that kind of pressure to stay in the conversation. Have the conversation. If it's relevant, come back to that person again at then or during the conference or during the event where you've met them. If you want to connect, and then similar to what Jocelyn said, always if you. I believe in this very like from the bottom of my heart. Try and add value. If you can add value to somebody, and that's not because you're trying to be duplicitous or try and go out of the way. You're trying to add value to show that there's a purpose for us connecting. And hear something that I can maybe connect you with, and if that worked for you, brilliant. And if that keeps me top of mind for you later on, then brilliant. But if that's not the reason I'm doing it, I just want to add value to the relationship that I can bring to between us, sort of thing.
And I also just would love to dig in a little bit more. And, I don't expect you to give any specifics because I'm sure that every event has a different kind of target. But what might your targets look like when you're going to an event?
So for me, it's always about what I'm trying to do in my career, where I'm trying to go in my career. If I'm trying, so I don't want to say I'm big on personal branding, but I'm big on controlling how my career is perceived. I'm big on controlling what that narrative is around what I'm doing. So therefore, when I go to an event, if I see somebody who I think has a really interesting profile, if I see somebody who I think is doing really interesting work that has synergy to the work that I'm doing within the arts and culture sector, then I'm going to want to connect with that person and just see where things go. And kind of going back to the online piece, what then tends to happen for me is that once I've connected with that person, because I take a genuine interest in them, people who are following them will then probably connect with you or they may come across your work. And that's what's also led to my having a bigger network because other people can now recommend you based on me connecting with Jocelyn or me connecting with Lewis or something of that nature because other people have seen our interactions online as an example. So those are the things that I tend to try and do. Um, and then more importantly, for me, I try to connect with senior leaders mainly not because I'm trying to connect, but I believe that there needs to be a presence, especially with what I do within social, and they need to have a better understanding what good social can look like. And connecting with senior leaders kind of opens those conversations for them to see it from a different standpoint and point of view. So there's a aspiration of me trying to politely educate or inform from me connecting with these people because they could then see your work as well.
I think that's a really interesting note because I think we don't often think about, okay, well, how can I best communicate strategically what it is that I do and the value of that? And I think, particularly when it comes to social media, I think probably the most kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm generalizing, the most kind of like reluctance or like kind of misunderstanding of value might come from senior leadership, whereas the people working in those marketing roles and doing the delivery of it are already kind of aware of that value. So that's a really interesting kind of thought to kind of put into people's heads of like, what is it that you do? Where do you want to be working? And who is it that you typically need to convince of that value? So yeah, a really nice kind of like zoomed out strategic approach. Um, Jocelyn, why don't you go next? Could you tell us about some practical strategies that you found helpful when networking?
Sure, sure. The most useful thing, and it's not something everyone's going to want to do, but if you can, I really recommend it, is try and contribute to the event in some way. So even if you can say something for 2 minutes as part of the event, or you're contributing some artwork, or you're greeting people at the door, is a fantastic way to make networking so much easier because then people know who you are and they'll talk to you and it just opens up a little bit. There are some basics which I think are really useful just to kind of go over. I think a classic thing that I used to see with networking is people would arrive like as a group of two or three from their organization and then mostly kind of stick together, especially when you're kind of newer to networking. I really encourage you to get into the habit of going alone to these things, kind of building up that sense of, yeah, I can do this on my own. I'm looking to talk to people I know. Another obvious one is put away your phone. It's so easy at networking when things feel a bit awkward to take out your phone. But when you do that, it's a blocker for people coming up to talk to you. You know, it's actually perfectly fine just to stand there a little bit alone, smile, kind of space out ever so slightly. And at first, it will feel like the most awkward thing in the world. You'll feel like everyone's eyes are on you. They really aren't. I try and pretend I'm scoring points for like every second that I'm doing that because I'm like, yeah, this is how you do it. And inevitably, people who also want to talk will come up to you and will say hi. Or you can kind of walk over and kind of space out ever so slightly next to a group. And you do that for long enough, someone will talk to you and it will work. It feels uncomfortable. Really recommend it. And then beyond that, like, I think it's really nice to, it sounds obvious, but it kind of chimes with the theme of what we've been saying, but just show some personality. You know, it's lovely to be a bit vulnerable too, rather than trying to be cool and kind of informed and like, yeah, I'm someone you should definitely talk to. I love opening a conversation by saying something that I'm not understanding or something that I'm really like finding difficult and just showing a bit of humanness. Because I think humanness cuts through really nicely at those events when people go, oh, okay, you're actually finding it really difficult to do this. I am too, and then they share something. So I think vulnerability is always a really nice way of actually starting building a bit of a connection. Yeah, that would be my overall theme on that is it's absolutely fine to not be talking to someone at an event. You know, panic will set in. Sit with the panic. Enjoy the panic. It will subside. And usually it's been firing through that is when I've actually got to the really good conversations.
Amazing. Thank you so much for those tips. Some really kind of actionable takeaways there, which is always very helpful. And I totally agree with I often go to, conferences and events with a colleague or with multiple colleagues, and I will always say, okay, once we get there, let's just separate. Like it's really nice for us, like, but we see each other all the time and we're here to meet other people. So it is easy to kind of fall back on those people those familiar faces from your own organization, if you work at an organization, but ultimately that's not what you're there for. So yeah, to just say, make a rule to just say, we're not gonna, go over and see each other for the rest of this event is so helpful. Um, so yeah, I concur with that. Lewis, how about yourself? What are some kind of practical tips that you found to be helpful?
So I think the first thing for me to say is I am this person. I find networking very intimidating. And even though it's a really big part of my job, I'm still a little bit apprehensive. So something to remember, I love a little metaphor or a saying is I always think of networking a bit like swimming, where getting in the pool is the hardest bit. So the first conversation you have is always going to be the hardest, going up to someone, joining the conversation, and it gets easier the longer in there um as you get used to the temperature of the room, I'll say. Um, there's so many bits and pieces which I find really helpful. If you're at a specific event, usually there's organizers around. Talking to an organizer is always a great thing to do because they've spoken to other people, and like loads of other people on the panel have said, they're also looking to do some matchmaking and join people together and help facilitate that. So there's no need to worry, and there's always someone who feels exactly the same as you in the room, even if they're not showing it. um I like to go to these kind of events with a question sometimes, or something that you might want a bit of help with, like Jocelyn was saying. One of the questions I use for ages, less so now, is um, how people are thinking about and using TikTok, because lots of people have big opinions on it. I think AI is probably overtaking that conversation a little bit with how people are feeling about it. And then the other thing I don't think anyone's mentioned so far is anything you can do to make you feel comfortable makes the conversations a lot easier. And for me, that is what I'm wearing. If I'm wearing something that makes me feel comfortable, I find the whole event so much easier. Not today because I'm not outside, but usually you would find me in a pair of very colourful and patterned dungarees. Anyone who's seen me around an event knows it's sort of like my uniform, and it makes me feel so much more comfortable than if I needed to go somewhere, maybe wearing like a suit and tie.
It's interesting, yeah. The uniform thing is, I think that especially if you're going for a conference, that can work really well. People will start to see you, and they'll associate you with that. And one thing I would say, depends on how you're trying to network. So if you're trying to proactively network, go to events or conferences that have those kind of program that allows you to network, or that has a program that has activations where you're going to have to connect to other people. So if you're trying to actively network, trying to find those conferences or those programs that kind of will push you down that line because you've got to work together, or you're going to do a piece of programming together, or it's going to have maybe they have lunch together. So if they have lunch and they've got round tables, you've got to go sit at different tables to eat. So try and find those kind of conferences or events that allow you to naturally kind of mingle and engage with people. If you're going to be strategic, then again, I think it gets about just thinking about who you want to meet specifically. And once you've met those people, give yourself that kind of grace to say, okay, I've met the people I wanted to connect with. Now let's just kind of wonder and put into action all of the kind of tips that have been shared today.
Also, one thing I would just really agree with from what Lewis said is like finding the matchmakers as well. So those can be the conference organizers, but if you know one or two people who are really good and just know everyone in the room, by all means, just say, "Hey, you're great at this. Could you introduce me to a few people?" And they'll have to be happy to, and that just makes everything easier.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have two things to add just to what has been said. Comfort is so important, and so many times I'll have like my laptop with me and I'll have a bag that doesn't feel heavy at the beginning of the event. And then I'll be stood around for like an hour and I'll be like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. But it's just that I'm holding a heavy bag. So use the cloakroom if there is one available. And also, I think what I really enjoy about the AMA's conference is and Lewis hasn't told me to say this, I'm just kind of volunteering it myself, is that there are a real kind of variety of networking options available, which is so nice. Like there'll be obviously the conference itself, but there'll also be like dinners where it's a smaller group of people and you can choose, I love natural wine and I'm a really big foodie. And I remember when I was last there, there was like a specific restaurant that had that on the menu. And I was like, okay, great. Well, I know that the people who choose this will probably have similar interests. And then, that was nice for me. And a couple of my colleagues went to the bigger social and they enjoyed that because they like more of a kind of like lively environment. So I think it's really nice. Sorry, I was networking last night, so I'm losing my voice. I think it's really nice to, again, just kind of, I think what's really nice that's coming out of this discussion is honoring what works for you. And, obviously, we are all going to be in situations that might push us outside of our comfort zone. And I do think a degree of that is healthy, and helps us grow. But if you know that, like, actually, this particular environment makes me uncomfortable, then what can you do to kind of help yourself rather than forcing yourself to fit into spaces that aren't designed for you, essentially? So I love that as a kind of, honoring yourself. I think that's a really nice kind of takeaway. Um, Obviously, we've had a lot of discussion so far, although it will never feel like enough. I feel like we could talk for ages, about in person in particular. But I'm also aware that we've got some really great online networking experience on the panel. And actually, I think somebody commented, and I think this is super interesting, that they hadn't considered social media as networking. So I think it will be really useful for us to kind of explore this. And I don't know, maybe I'm interested to, I think, I can't remember whose name it was who commented that, but I'm interested to hear what your perspective is by the end of this conversation, whether you see it as networking or something else entirely. But to kind of begin that conversation, our third question for the panelists is, what are your preferred platforms and methods for online networking? And are there any strategies you've found to be most effective for turning digital connections into real world collaborations? That's quite a long question, so I'm going to pop that in the chat in case any of the panelists or anybody else wants to check it again or refer back to it. But is there anybody who would like to kind of start out with answering this?
I'm
Yes.
happy to.
No, go, Lewis, go.
I'm
Everybody's
happy
like,
to,
yes.
Like,
to
let's
jump in with this. I
go.
think we're all really excited about this question. So I'm going to do that really annoying thing to start with of asking more questions to answer a question, because I think it's really important and interesting to interrogate what you mean when we're going to networking. So I always ask myself the question of what is the goal of networking online, because your strategy really changes depending on what you're trying to do. Are you trying to grow your network or scope out potential employers or clients? Because the way you approach things will really change. Here at the Arts Marketing Association, the AMA, I run a scheme called the Connector Scheme, which we've been running in some form for about 10 years now, and the Connector Scheme is the latest iteration. And we do things, we have lots of different themes and groups. So we have groups based on location, based on the sort of cultural art form medium that you work in and career stage. And at each of our events, we have some content that you experience at the same time, which gives you sort of a baseline or something to talk about. Because one of those things that I think we've got through a lot of the answers by the panelists is having something to connect on to start with makes the conversation easy and allows you to build on the actual conversation going further than what you've just experienced, but it makes it a lot easier as like a little crutch. One of the things that I'd say that I'm terrible at, and I'm going to put my hands up, and it's been my goal for this year, and I've been getting much better, is doing that really simple thing of after you've finished some online networking, just sending a quick follow-up email if you've got any details, or doing the collection on sort of the dreaded LinkedIn for me. I'm getting much better at it. I think it's mainly driven by the LinkedIn games. Anyone who likes Queens or Tango, please hit me up because I am slightly obsessed with them now. But the other thing I will say on this is I hear a lot from our members, because we have sort of between 4,000 to 5,000 members, that lots of people still don't see the value in networking. But I would say networking is really valuable if you're in an organization for yourself personally, but also your organization. So many collaborations, co-productions, partnerships between organizations start at networking events. And having that mindset of just being really genuine and being human and engaging with the content or the form of why you're there to start, why you're there in the first place, really just lets those grow, and a lot of the time can be more valuable than other avenues.
Thank you. And I had no idea about LinkedIn Games, so thank you for the heads up. Hopefully, I won't procrastinate too much on that. Hayden, you were also very eager to answer this one, so over to you.
So I can comfortably say that my network has been built through networking online. Through probably my biggest connection I used to work in agencies, at creative agencies and brand agencies. And the first person I ever kind of really put this to the test to was my former mentor. He was an MD at an agency at the time. And I just literally reached out to him. As like, ironically, it was on Valentine's Day, which is peculiar, but I really randomly reached out to him and was like, "Oh, I love the work you're doing. You don't many see many black MDs, especially black male MDs, at creative agencies, and it's just like super inspiring. I'd love to connect." And that started a whole process of me going back and forth with him. Every now and then I would send him interesting articles. I would engage with the stuff that he'd post online. But it all stemmed from a genuine passion, a genuine excitement to see somebody and to connect to somebody. And from me connecting with him, it allowed me to start doing panels and started to talking and being on different events, and we created a business together. And so much kind of blossomed out of that, from that one random LinkedIn messaging. So I would definitely say on platforms like LinkedIn, if you are going to connect with people, play the long game. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to collaborate straight away. Try and build that relationship by sending them interesting articles, or by connecting with them on their posts or their content if they say something that's really interesting. Um, if you have a presence on those platforms, kind of make sure that your profile shows why they should want to connect with you. So there's relevant information on your profile that can connect you to that person. So if you go to my profile, you'll see that I talk about social media and digital marketing within the arts. So if I'm connecting with somebody in that space, there's a reason and it makes sense to them. Um, I know I've kind of said this again, but I really can't stress the point about being authentic. Like you have to have a, especially when you're doing it online. If you've got a passion about that person or that passion about that person's work, then you will find ways to do it. And I hope Jocelyn doesn't mind me saying this. I've often sent Jocelyn a few things because one, because I love the work that she's doing, but then I find things, oh, Jocelyn, you might find this interesting. So I'll just send. It's not out of some ring of I want Jocelyn to give me work. It's more just you might find this interesting, and it goes, and there's just things like that. And that's how I tend to find that you can build relationships. And then finally, if you're really trying to connect to someone who you have no kind of real connection with, what I would say is, especially if they've got a big following and maybe you might find a bit intimidating, try and find a social media platform where they have the least followers, but they're active on, because then you're more likely to see you on that platform if they haven't got the biggest following on that platform, but they're active on that platform. But yeah, you can definitely network on social media.
Thank you. I do have some follow-up questions, but I'm gonna first hand over to Jocelyn to answer this one as well.
Yeah, cool. And thank you, Hayden. And that's a super cool tip about the sort of least followed social media. That's a really fab one. For me, it's all LinkedIn. LinkedIn, surprisingly, is the only social media that I use now. But it really does carry some value to it. And then also echoing what Hayden said, it is about having an authentic voice. And I think often when people go on LinkedIn or they're just getting started, they sort of think they have to LinkedInicize their voice and start speaking in some way, which they never really would in person. I think you really don't have to do that. Like, if you wouldn't say it out loud, don't change your entire writing style for LinkedIn and become someone you're not. It just makes you really bland and it's not really very helpful. But then, yeah, I can kind of go on about a few of the things I have found useful with LinkedIn. When I have free time, whenever I get a connection request and it's someone even adjacently relevant to what I'm doing, I'll usually always reach out and say, hey, I'd love to catch up over a virtual coffee, half hour, something. And I've turned that into my pattern. Because I think if someone's reaching out to me and they've made the effort to connect, they've probably got something that they kind of sparked in their brain. And I think, well, half an hour, I'm going to have a coffee anyway. Might as well have a nice conversation, see what happens. And, it's not always relevant, but it's always enjoyable. You're always meeting someone new. And I found that turning that into a habit has been really, really helpful, uh, and has been where most of my networking actually now comes from. Within that, other stuff on LinkedIn, if you do go to events, Really good if you have a decent camera, you can sit somewhere in the front, take some good pictures, be the person who posts some of the best pictures after the event, tag the speakers, tag anyone you spoke to saying how you genuinely enjoyed the conversation. That will get comments, it will get reshared. The organizers love people posting pictures of their events, so you might get them sharing it too. Suddenly, then people recognize you from posting that, then you get more people coming in. So make some content as well that supports sort of the events that you go to. And then the only other thing I would say, I get a lot of my networking by reaching out kind of long form. So instead of just sending someone a connection request, I might read an article that someone wrote, or they might have done like a research paper, and then I'll put some time out of my day and I'll write them kind of an actual letter, like an email, saying some of the things that I really found interesting in what they wrote about and what I would, love to talk more about if they have time. And I think often that's actually quite a rare move because people are quite used to getting short form comments and likes and stuff. But when someone reaches out with like a letter that they've put a bit of time into, often you do get someone, even if they're, quite high up in whatever they're doing, will often be quite touched and will be quite happy to take the time to have a conversation. So don't throw that out either. Like writing actual letters to people really does work, and it's nice. You get to kind of have a deeper point of contact too. But I'll keep going, but I'll leave it there. Otherwise, it will just descend into chaos.
Um,
Just
no,
build on that.
you jump in, Hayden. Yeah.
Not from what this is going back to in person, but I had a mentee I used to work with, and he was really good at networking. And one thing he used to do, he used to buy three £5 gift vouchers from like a Pret or Starbucks or something like that. And then he would, and the people who he really wanted to connect with, he would say, "Here's a £5 voucher to get a coffee. I'd love to get a coffee with you. Even if you don't, here's a £5 voucher to get yourself a coffee." And just from that, breaking the ice of that got him so many meetings, and it got him his first job, and he's now flying. But it was just a really simple. I know it's monetary, but it's a small coffee. It's just a nice little kind of gift, and it's something different.
Love that.
That's really nice. And I was going to say that kind of insight from you, Jocelyn, as well, on how to turn something online into, even if it's a virtual coffee, it turns it into a much more quality connection. So I think that's a really nice suggestion on how to take what could just be any other kind of LinkedIn connection and turn it into a genuine relationship, which is really nice. I have a very quick one because I'm conscious that we have had some questions, but I also wanted to ask about the value of carving out a niche for yourself, because I think, as Hayden kind of suggested, there is a real value of, and I'm sure that, I don't know, Hayden, but maybe the things that you've been sending to Jocelyn are things that are relating to AI, maybe. And I think by sharing regular content about what it is you do, I think you are able to then tell people this is the niche that I'm occupying, so that when they have a question, a concern, a project, that requires somebody within that niche, they kind of think of you, just automatically. So I guess, is that something that you found to be valuable? This kind of goes out to all of the panelists, really. And do you have any tips on that, just as a kind of little brief add-on to this discussion point?
100%. Most of my client work, if not 99.9% of it, has come from network, has come from people, and it's come from the fact that I've had a presence on LinkedIn. So I've had a presence on LinkedIn, and somebody has then connected. I remember I got a job working with the with Claw Leadership Group, and somebody who I'd never even worked with. I'd never worked with this person. I don't even know them personally, but they know other people in my network, and they said, "Oh, Hayden will be good for this." The only work they've ever seen with me was from my LinkedIn work, and from me kind of connecting with them because they were connected in the sector. So I'd never met the person, spoke with the person, but just from having like, you don't have to have a massive following on the platform. It's just, but the fact that you're showing that you have an understanding of your work, having shown that you have an understanding of whatever your subject matter is, can help you connect with other people and help you also drive other people to push you forward for opportunities that seem to fit within your own remit.
Wonderful. Okay, fab. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just think I feel very motivated to be a bit better on LinkedIn as a result of this conversation. So, one of the first questions that came through is, do you have any ideas on how to exit a conversation so you don't waste networking time or outstay your time networking with one person. And I think Hayden already kind of touched on this. Does anybody have any kind of practical ways of like, okay, this is how I approach that?
Yeah, but now you'll know what it is when I do it to you. It's the very British. Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you know where the toilet is? And then I'll normally
Nice.
go to the loo, check my phone, and then that's my hard exit. But yeah, sometimes it's just easier just to say that.
Yeah, love that. Um, yeah, I'll do that. I'll also kind of say, I'm just gonna grab another drink if my glass is empty. Otherwise, that's very insincere. Um, or if I know that, there's somebody else that I haven't caught yet, I'll just say, oh, there's somebody that I just really want to quickly grab. But I'll, look forward to kind of catching you later. Um, but yeah, I think
I think just say
we,
thank you. I just say thank you. I've been great talking to you. Thanks. Yeah, hopefully connect soon. I think because we're all there for the same similar reasons, people can accept it. It does feel a bit clunky at times, but it's just thank you.
yeah, we're all in the same boat, aren't we? Lewis, were you going to say something?
Sometimes I find it quite helpful to sort of spin it around, and you could say something along the lines of, "I like, thank you so much for your time. I know there's loads of people here that you probably want to talk to, so I won't take up any more, but I'll try and catch you later." Makes it feel like the whatever conversation you've had with the person is you valued it, which makes them in return value the conversation slightly more, and ends it on a quite positive note, and sort of allows them to do the walking away.
I think that's lovely because I think it's not kind of, you don't want somebody to feel like you value other people's conversation more than you do theirs. And it's like just acknowledging, I know that we're both here to talk to lots of people. So actually, I'm going to leave you to it. We've had a lovely conversation. So I think that's a really nice kind of way of switching it.
Yeah, definitely. I've been in lots of conversations where it's very clear that both of you have come to the end of the conversation you're trying to have, but no one can make that break. So I think
Yeah.
slipping something in like that just gives everyone the chance to be like, oh, okay, and now it's time to recirculate the room.
And they'll be grateful for that. Nobody wants to feel awkward. So actually, if they associate you with being like, decisive, quick, comfortable to be around, then that's wonderful. Okay, we have another question. Do you have any tips for finding the people that you want to talk to? It can be hard to find the organizations from the delegates list without staring at their lanyard. I have one very kind of practical tip for this, just because I've done it fairly recently, is if I know if a lot of these conferences events share the delegate list beforehand and you can kind of see, okay, this is the organization, this is the kind of position that I should be speaking to. I will have a look and see if I can find them on LinkedIn, and I will just either familiarize myself with their face so that when I do see them in person I recognize them. Obviously people change their hair and all of those things that make it kind of slightly more difficult in person, but even just like put a little Google Doc together with some photos in that you can say, oh, these are the people that I want to meet in person. I don't know if that's weird of me to admit
Very
that I
Devil Wears
do.
Prada, isn't it?
It is very double word. So I don't carry around like a binder with like, this is this person that you're about to speak to. But that's one practical approach that I have. I don't know if anybody else has any others.
I actually don't. I'm quite face blind. So even if I've met someone a few times, I often will not know who they are at all, which is incredibly embarrassing. So I have to just set myself that I can't do that. And I might ask them, hey, who else have you enjoyed speaking to here? And then I'll just use that as my next thing. But I've given up with the idea of actually finding specific people. For me personally, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I think I tend to go by who's speaking. So if there's something interesting, I want to if the conference I'm going to in this event, a speaker who I really want to connect with, I try to go off of that. And then what I also tend to do sometimes is go down. I'll find them on LinkedIn, then find their team on LinkedIn. Because if I find, especially if I want to connect with the organization specifically, it might not necessarily have to connect with that head honcho straight away. It might be someone in their team who can help me kind of start the conversations and for you to get a better idea of what they're doing, what they're not doing, and stuff.
Yeah, I feel like looking at the program and kind of going to those talks of the people that you're interested in is really a direct and quite easy way to do that, I think. Lewis, do you have any answers to this one?
I think it's just important to remember everyone's sort of in the same boat, especially when you're trying to find a specific person. A lot of the time, I will just circle the room a couple of times, and I will do the staring at people's name badges or lanyards, just knowing that everyone sort of knows why we're doing this, and that's what they're there for. Um, I know here at the AMA we get a lot of feedback on our name badges and lanyards, and we're always trying to sort of tweak and adjust things. So lots of people they're trying to they're trying to make the names bigger, or they're trying to make things higher so it's slightly less awkward. But I think if you can sort of make peace with that and be a little bit more comfortable with it's okay to just look at who you're talking to, um, that's really helpful because after you've made a couple of loops of the room, you sort of know where people are. And even if you can't find the person you wanted to talk to, you might find someone else who you think would be really interesting to have a conversation with.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Okay, I think we've probably got time for one more question, and the answers will have to be short, I'm afraid. But we've got a question from somebody who was saying that they've basically they struggle with networking events because there feels like a kind of jar between like the informal conversation and how to actually bring up what you're interested in working together on. So, how do you kind of turn that lovely, maybe informal conversation into a collaboration, whether it's in the conversation itself or in how you follow up? And I know that's kind of a complicated question to answer in like a minute, but I'm just going to be really annoying and ask you to try and do that, please.
I think if you're going to an event to try and work with somebody, to network to work, you have to have done a lot more research. Like it's difficult to. I honestly don't believe in trying to work with somebody straight away as soon as I connect with them. So if you're going to an event to connect with someone because you want to introduce your work to work with them straight away, there needs to have been some kind of research or at least a beginning of building that relationship online or in another capacity. Because obviously, if you're going to an event and there's a big speaker and everybody's trying to work with that person, everybody's trying to connect with that person. So what I would say is try and build that relationship beforehand so that or at least there's some sort of introduction so you're not cold to that person when you're going to talk about that work. Also, you'd hope that they're doing work, they're in a space that's similar to you so that there's mutual ground for you to actually talk about and you can example their work to circle right around to your own work. But yeah, that's how I would approach it.
I would also really agree with that. Like you, like looking at a picture collaboration at a networking event, I would feel really on the spot. I mean, what I might do is say something like, "Oh, it really got some sparks firing when you were talking about this because I do this kind of work." So I might like show the relevancy, like the Venn diagram overlap, but I wouldn't actually pitch for a collaboration. I might give some seeds for how we're relevantly connected though.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I completely agree. I think about it as um, if you build interest in what you're doing. So going with those seeds and talking about maybe something that you've done along the same lines, that it allows them to more naturally go, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what we could do together in the back of their heads. And like Hayden's been saying throughout this, that if you're looking for connecting with someone to do a project or work together, you are playing a bit of the long game. So allowing them to come to those conclusions speeds that timeline up infinitely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And one more thing that I'm just going to very briefly touch on because we've had a question recirculated in the chat. And I think imposter syndrome is something that we surprisingly haven't touched on today, but somebody asked, any recommendations for overcoming imposter syndrome for introducing or marketing myself as an artist when I've only done voluntary work so far to build my portfolio? And I know it's very easy for me to say this, but I am also an artist myself. And I think you have to remind yourself that, of course, being a professional artist is what you want to be. You want to get paid to do the thing that you do. But doing it on a voluntary basis doesn't mean you're not an artist. You create the art, whatever it is that you do, therefore you are an artist. So I know that it can feel difficult to kind of believe that in yourself, that, you know, I'm doing it, therefore I am that thing. But I think actually that's more of a kind of internal thing of like, actually, I am that artist that I say I am. So yeah, as a very quick kind of answer to that question, I think the more you say it, the more you'll believe it and find it easier to present yourself as. Okay, cool. We've run over a couple of minutes, so I'm really sorry about that. But thank you so, so much to both our panelists and the attendees. We've had some amazing insights from the discussion, but also in the chat. Everybody's been very generous with their kind of approach today. I love it when we have an event like this and you can just tell that everybody's really engaged and enjoying it. So thank you so much. Thank you again to our panelists. Please feel free to share. I know that Jocelyn, Lewis, and Hayden have all shared their LinkedIn links in the chat. If you want to share them again, please feel free. Everybody go check out what they're doing and start connecting. I hope there's some collaborations born out of this session today. Very last piece of housekeeping as well. As I said at the beginning, HDK run a free monthly digital marketing webinar. In November, we are exploring sustainable digital marketing practices. And in December, we do this every year. The entire HDK team presents a webinar on digital marketing trends for the following year. So we'll be looking at that for 2026. And I'm also going to be sharing the program for the entirety of 2026 very soon. So we have lots to look forward to there. I'm not going to give any more away than that. I really want to, but I'm not going to for the purpose of like a proper announcement at some point. But yeah, thank you again, everybody. I think I will leave the chat open for one more minute, but we will draw to a close and I will end the session at 11:35. Panelists, if you need to head off, then feel free. But if you also just want to say bye, please feel free to do so.
And thank you so much, Phoebe, for having me. And thank you to all the chat as well. And some great questions. A few people I recognize in the chat as well. So hi to everyone there. But otherwise, just thank you. Really enjoyed this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, what a great morning and a great session. It's been really great to learn from both of you as well. In addition to everyone in the chat, there's some really good tips in there if people haven't scrolled through that we haven't had time to get to. And if anyone ever wants to talk to me about networking or anything else, especially LinkedIn games, I am slightly obsessed. Please let me know.
Thanks, everybody. I'm going back to bed because it's 6 o'clock. So, bye.
Yeah, thank you, Hayden. Hayden is joining us from elsewhere in the world right now. So everybody, feel very grateful for that. Okay, wonderful. And yeah, thank you again, everybody. And I look forward to another super uplifting session like this one again soon, hopefully. All right, take care, guys. Bye.